is what? Oneness. Oneness means everything has to come back to what? One. Then if everything has to come back to one, why do you have so many different names?
To clarify, make it
more
easier.
clarity, better understanding.
Right? So therefore, you have increasing names. Increasing names for what? It doesn't create duality. Please understand. It really further strengthens your understanding that in spite of all of this, there is what? Only one. So that is the vision which needs to be communicated. Otherwise, you will get lost with terms. All the terms are an aid for you to understand from so many different standpoints. When you look at the creation, actually it's only one thing. If without this inquiry, if you just say one, and somebody asks you, how come one, and you have no answer. Now, with this inquiry, you are not afraid of what? Going and exposing this knowledge to anyone. The whole methodology is to make you see how all that is here is one. And that one is who? Awareness, Ishvara, which is what? Also
Brahma.
I. Right? So this is the whole purpose of the teaching. Otherwise you'll go in digression and then lose track of what exactly Vedanta is conveying. What are these statements that it's making? What is the purpose of all these statements? Okay, so now now Ishvara, as we saw, is I loved when people listen to this, the first question that everybody asks, so why did this awareness have to manifest as the universe? Why? There is no why, and this is how it is. And this is what Shona just told me outside the class. And she says, actually this is what the nature is. This is how it is. It has a potential to manifest, and it manifests. And within that manifestation, what? There is also another capacity to cover that reality. So that what? Everybody who's in it is not aware of it. But if you are not aware of it, you are not stuck or you are not doomed, because you are also given the capacity to figure it out. So if you are smart, what do? The capacity which is given to you, using that capacity, figure it out. This is called intelligent living. Okay? So now, there are other people who are looking at the nature of the creation and the cause of the creation, and they all have different ideas. And all those people who have different ideas are not just untrained thinkers like you and me, they are all philosophers. So you have to engage in a dialogue with them. And you can't just say, what? Oh, what nonsense. You can't say that. You have to engage in a dialogue with what? Reasoning. You have to examine the ideas, and you also then have to see how much they hold and how much they don't hold. And who wins the argument?
The one whose logic holds to the end.
withstands all
Excellent.
contradiction.
One whose logic holds at the end is the one who has truth with oneself, right? So now we are going to start to look at different schools of thought, right? The first one is this whole Anu and Parmanu. So these are what we call Naiyayika and Vaisheshika. These are schools of thought, right? They are philosophers. They are looking and they have they think they understand how the creation is. So now they are saying, excuse me, but I don't agree with you. Imagine. Right? You are explaining, they get up and they say, sorry, I don't agree with you. I think it's like this. This is what they are saying. According to Naiyayika and Vaisheshika, there are certain categories. Okay? So therefore, the categories is the whole creation. What is the cause of the creation? For them, there is no Ishvara. No Ishvara. So then, how did this creation come about? So they have to explain. Right? So they have their own explanation. There is something called Dravya. Dravya is what? All the different objects. Then there is another category called Guna. Guna are what?
Characteristic.
Characteristics or attributes. Right? So different objects get combined with different attributes and then forms take place. This is how they see the creation. Right? So now, how would you argue with them? Do you have any ideas? Then I will tell you how we argue with them. They say, what are you talking about? What Ishvara you are talking about? There are some matters and then there are some attributes. They just combine in different permutations and combinations and it becomes the universe.
It doesn't explain the miracles, that many miracles that we take in place.
Or the order of the universe.
For the
The laws and the way it is functioning. The order and the intelligence is not visible in this format of explanation.
It's too base.
Wonderful.
So
What is the base? You're saying material comes together, but what forms that material that you're saying comes together?
Yeah, the Dravya. Random versus intelligent.
Who was responsible for the substance? Where did it come from?
Excellent. Excellent. You are starting with, what are you starting with? You are starting with time space is already there because every object can exist only within what? Time and space. Where did it come from? You haven't answered it at all. Then somehow, as Preeti says, randomly, they all just join together by chance.
It's too orderly to be by chance.
Ask a doctor. She says it's too orderly to be by chance. The third argument. We say, you have created this whole category of Dravya and Guna, as though Gunas are all independently existing. Are there categories like that? Are there categories like that? The redness or a blueness, do you see it hanging somewhere? You always see it as what? Part of a given thing. So that means, according to your vision, there is an object like that and there are gunas like that and they just combine. There is no guna which is independent of
The object.
dravya, the object.
Whose attribute?
Exactly.
Whose guna?
Exactly. Every time there is a guna, you have to ask, whose guna? You don't just randomly in space talk about gunas. Wonderful. Right? So therefore, so many questions are unanswered in this vision of the creation. First, where did time-space come from? No answer. Second, where did all these dravyas come from? They are just there. No answer. How did these dravyas, it's not that they are randomly get together. When they randomly get together, can it create this intelligent creation? No. So there is a logical flaw. Then, these gunas is a second category which comes together with dravya that doesn't exist. As Nehru says, guna cannot exist without objects. So this attribute category without corresponding object doesn't exist. Okay. So then when we say that gunas and dravyas cannot exist independently and come together, then they say, yes they can, because they have what? Samavaya sambandha. There is some kind of an inherent connection between guna and the dravya. That guna, which is an attribute, and dravya, which is an object which has an attribute, they are inherently connected. This is their answer. We say, look at the object when you begin to look at the object, what? Find a real dravya and find a real guna. Where will you end up?
Together.
No way.
Together, you find it in the same. It's there. Guna is part of the.
And you will end up in awareness when you really think about it. Because it's forms within forms, within forms, within forms. Where is the real dravya and where is the real guna? As I keep on telling you, what? The atoms combine together and give rise to a given guna. Right? Then what? That guna then combines with something else. Many atoms combine and makes it into, particles combine and make it into hydrogen. Now that hydrogen combines with oxygen and gives what? Another product altogether, which is what? Water. Then you add one more oxygen atom to what? H2O, and it becomes what? H2O2, and what does it become? Hydrogen peroxide. Each, and in that one oxygen atom, is there a quality of hydrogen peroxide? No. Each increasing what? Permutation and combination leads to what? Increasing attributes, which are what? Not there in that which forms that new, exactly. new object. Right? So this category that you have created of dravya and guna, and they are all existing somehow, doesn't exist. Your whole theory doesn't hold on any of the grounds. Neither it explains how time and space came, neither it explains how that dravya came into being, nor it explains how that guna came into being, nor it explains what? How did they all just join together to create this intelligent creation? If you really think about it, really, this whole, the paradigm of science, what? Big Bang, and somehow things have combined, is what? When there is no Ishvara, it is what? It is little bit closer to this. Because they also talk about atoms and particles, and they talk about what? Somehow they come together to create this multifaceted universe. But in that, so many answers are still what? Unanswered. So many questions remain unanswered. Right? So therefore, Vaisheshika is what?
Randomness.
This randomness in creation. Just things are there and they combine together. That is negated by us. Right? Now, that is not the end of the story. There are others waiting in line to argue with you. So, the second school.
Neema,
Yes.
when you give a name Ishvara, and that has the potential of the creation, for me, scientifically thinking, I would not say it's an explanation, it's giving a name, but that's not, for me, from my understanding, scientifically it's not an explanation.
Because you know what, the whole universe collapses and only one thing remains, and that one thing which remains is what in your buddhi, which is awareness. So the whole creation comes from where? From that awareness. How? Because it has a potential to manifest. So this is how Vedanta explains it. Because there is no second thing remaining other than that awareness. Because everything collapses as a concept. So the only thing which remains is that awareness. So therefore, the whole Jagat, if it doesn't come from awareness, from where else it comes? There is no second thing. Everything collapses. Time collapses, space collapses, objects collapse. And one thing which is invariably present is what? That awareness. And that awareness has the capacity to manifest. That's why anything that you look right now, what does it do? It collapses back into that awareness. If it was not the case, it would just be a belief. But right now, if I can make you see any given thing and it resolves into awareness, then what? It has not only made that statement, but it has what? Made you see that reality. Using Satya Mithya method, and the Shastra makes you see that. Understand? Okay. So now, the second argument is for is the Buddhist. Okay? Now the Buddhists are, I don't know what the contemporary Buddhists are saying, I don't know, so I am not. But in this commentaries, Adi Shankaracharya deals with two schools of Buddhism. One is Shunyavadi and the other one is Kshanika Vijnanavadi. And within that Buddhism, there are two schools and each one has a different idea of how the creation came. Okay. Now, the first arguer is the Shunyavadi. They agree with us and they say it's true that the world is mithya because anything that I look, it what? Breaks down and down and down and down. And ultimately, it says, what Buddhism says is, then what is the final thing? They said shunya. There is no final thing. That is the idea of zero. There is no finality about anything. Everything which seems to be real actually just collapses. So therefore, they call it what? The whole universe as what? An illusion. An illusion because I see, but when I look into it, what happens? Collapses. And ultimately, what are you left with? Nothing. That is called Shunyavadi. How would you argue with them?
How did something get from nothing and how does nothing become something?
Excellent.
The manifestation has to be explained.
Good, Rajan. Wonderful. This is the logic. Please say it louder and slower. The logic is that.
How does something come from nothing and how does something become nothing? So manifestation has to be out of something. So explanation of how that nothing became all these things is not explained in Buddhism.
Excellent. Logically, what he's saying is absolutely right, right? You can't have something coming from nothing.
Awareness is also something.
That's what we are saying. That's why we are saying that awareness is one thing. It is there and from it comes everything. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma is the truth. Not nothingness is the truth.
No, my question was, where does awareness come from?
Yeah, that awareness is. It is Satyam.
It is the singularity.
It is the Satyam what? Which is on which everything else is dependent. And how do you know the presence of that Satyam? That Satyam is given to you not as an object, but what? As that awareness which is the invariable presence in your buddhi. You have an access to that. If you did not have an access to it, you'll never know it.
Can you repeat that one more time? Say it again.
Okay. Shunyavadi, this the Buddhist school of thought, which says the whole universe that you look. What is it that you want me to repeat?
Just the last bit, that you have access to that awareness, just that last.
Okay, just the last part, and that is that the argument that Rajan is making is, it's a very important argument, right? When we define mithya, are we saying that it is false? No. Are we saying that it's an illusion? No. We are defining it very carefully and we are saying it as what? Dependent reality. The minute you say that it's a dependent reality, you have to, what? One thing which it is dependent upon, then that in turn is dependent upon, and that in turn is dependent upon. It has to end somewhere. And where it ends is called what? Satyam. Satyam which is independently existing and it does not depend upon anything else and upon which everything else depends. Now, this Satyam, if it was not available to you, will you ever understand it? No. But it is given to you. Where is it given to you? As self-evident I. Excellent. The invariable presence. Now, what is the problem? That invariable presence, you have mixed it up with what? Your mind and body. So now, what Vedanta does is, takes away that body and mind part and it makes you see what? That invariable presence. And it also then says that that invariable presence is not what? Just my little invariable presence. It is what? One whole invariable presence. Right? So therefore, from that invariable presence, what is the argument we gave to make it not just one your individual awareness but one whole? That once you take out the attributes of body and mind from that awareness, you have no way to distinguish one awareness from the other. This is the argument we gave. Because in order to say there are two awarenesses, you have to give one attribute to that awareness and the other attribute to the other awareness. Then you can prove there are two. But if all the attributes belong to only body and mind, awareness is what? Nirvikaraha, attributeless. Nirvikalpa.
In case we're talking of Shunya, can existence be an independent reality?
So, the existence which is there, that existence is true. There is one existence which is what? The invariable existence, which is what? Awareness. Sat, Chit. Sat, Chit. And then what? It is Anantam. It is limitless. The awareness which is existent, which is what? Not existent within, it's like an object within time and space, but it is what? Because of which?
The creation.
Exactly, the creation. The whole manifestation. So therefore, that existence and awareness which is available to you in your buddhi as self-evident I, once you remove that little restriction that you have given, what do you find out? That it is upon which the entire universe depends. It is the Satyam and everything else is Mithya. Time is Mithya, space is Mithya, object is Mithya. So therefore, you remove Shunyavadi by that logic. The logic is everything cannot come from nothing and everything cannot also be a manifestation of nothing. Then you have a third, the second school of Buddhism, which is the third opponent, which is what we call Kshanika Vijnana Vadi. According to Kshanika Vijnana Vadi, everything is nothing but flickers of consciousness.
Is there one better than them?
Because before it was Shunya, now they are in trouble. They can't get out. This is a very basic logical mistake, right? So therefore, they explain what? That the whole universe is what? Nothing but flickers. Who are you? You are flicker of consciousness. And what is the nature of mistake? That flicker seems like what?
Within time and space.
That flicker seems like a continuous reality to you. So what is knowledge? Taking out the reality from that continuity and understanding it as what? Just flickers.
Can you
Vijnana.
repeat that?
Kshanika Vijnanavadi.
But when you say flicker, it is like then time again comes into saying it is on and off.
Absolutely.
Then you again come into the same paradigm.
Absolutely. But what they are saying is, how does the universe come about? This is their explanation. Then we are still have to argue with them. So this is the answer you are giving. We are now understanding what they are saying. Right? What they are saying is, the whole universe is what? Flicker of, and who are you? You are flicker of consciousness. So what is this? One flicker, second flicker, third flicker, fourth flicker. And what have you taken yourself as?
Permanent.
A permanent, continuous entity. Right? So that means, what is knowledge for them? For Kshanika Vijnanavadi, what would be the knowledge? To recognize that I am only a flicker which appears to be continuous. So therefore this whole identity that I have, which is I, is a flicker. And my suffering is because I have given it what? A permanent, continuous status.
But then why is there that eightfold path and all?
So I don't know about, but this is their basic understanding. Kshanika Vijnanavadi, and this is why I don't know what the contemporary Buddhists say, I don't know, but these are the arguments which are part of the commentaries.
So, Neema, isn't this flicker akin to our thoughts?
Excellent. Excellent.
On, off.
Absolutely.
One thought comes, one thought goes.
Excellent.
So who is the...
Excellent. So
from
therefore,
where
wonderful. Wonderful. Because what this flickers refer to is what? The thoughts that we have. How long does the thought last? Few seconds. Fraction of a second. And where is our identity? The I that we have is what? With reference to these flickers of thoughts that we have. Right? So,
tomorrow a beggar, according to the thought.
exactly. Right? So therefore, what Buddhism is saying, Kshanikavadi, not Buddhism as a whole, Kshanikavadi, is saying is, it is actually equivalent to what we are describing as ahankara. That I sense gets mixed up with what? All the different thoughts and seems like what? A continuous entity, when actually it is what? Nothing but collection of flickers. Right? You have 60,000 different thoughts passing in your mind, and your identity as far as you are concerned is what? Whatever is your thought is who you are. If the thought is that of happiness, you are happy. If thought is that of sadness, you are sad. So every thought you impute on I, and therefore that I becomes a continuous entity, even though the thoughts are flicker. Because every thought gets imputed on an I, then I becomes what? A continuous entity.
With no stability.
Exactly. It becomes continuous stability. So according to Kshanika Vijnanavadi, what is knowledge? To recognize that it is only a flicker and there is no continuity.
And it's another big difference that these flickers are individual, or there's no oneness in it?
Yeah, all these flickers are individuals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's why I said when we know stability in the thought, because now I'm happy, now I'm sad. So and that way the world can also keep changing.
Yeah, so that's what they say. The whole, everything is a flicker, everything is constantly changing. And what do we see it as? Continuous, stable entity. So now, according to Kshanika Vijnanavadi, and all our suffering is because of what? We see it as a stable. I see myself as a stable entity. I see objects as a stable entity. I go for those objects for my gratification. So everything which is constantly changing, I see it as what? Stable. So knowledge is what? To remove, because stability is my superimposition. When I see it as flicker, I am in touch with reality. This is Kshanika Vijnanavadi. You understand? What is a flicker seems to be continuous, and that continuity leads to suffering. So therefore, for them, knowledge is what? To understand what I think to be continuous as flicker.
So that level of ignorance is still there. Right? There
So let's first understand what they are saying, because if you mix up everything, you will never get anything clearly. Let's get into their shoes and try to understand what they are saying without wanting to answer them. Once we have totally understood what they are saying, then we can begin to answer them. Because without understanding, how will you answer? Without understanding what they are saying, how will you answer? So has everybody understood how they analyze what is the problem and what is their solution? There. You understood?
Yes.
I didn't understand. According to them, knowledge is?
So, Kshanika means what?
Momentary.
Momentary. Vijnana is what? Knowledge. Vadi is the one who thinks that, who are you? You are what? Flicker of excellent. You are flicker of consciousness. So therefore, and that, as Nero is saying, what is this flicker of consciousness? Actually, it refers to thoughts. Now, these thoughts which are momentary, and where is your identity? With the thought, but not as momentary, but permanent. This is the problem, according to them. What is flicker is taken by you as what? Permanent. For them, this is a mistake. Now, so that means they also talk about mistake.
They are right in that explanation.
But what is the solution to this mistake?
understand that we are a flicker.
Excellent.
That's all.
Excellent. For them, the solution is to understand that I am a flicker and I am not a continuous entity. Because all your suffering comes from what?
For identifying that it's continuous and
Being
it's
that
not
I'm
a part.
Exactly. Wonderful, Neelu. So their only solution lies in what? Coming back to the flicker. Where is our solution? Living. Exactly.
They're connected, they're not entirely contradictory.
But there is a very big difference, right? And in the vision of reality, the conclusion that I am a flicker of consciousness and this is the truth about me, and the conclusion that I am limitless awareness, from which comes the whole universe, is sustained by it and goes back to it. There is a world of difference, right? It's not totally untrue, but it's highly partial.
They're trying to undo the mix-up part, one part of the mix-up which we have in the early stage.
Excellent. They are trying to do that ahankara and all the other emotion mix up.
That's all they're trying.
That's all they are doing.
Without reaching Satya.
Without reaching Satya.
They are
Excellent.
or they are like almost there but not.
Absolutely. They're not really almost there
They're not
because the
there.
whole conclusion is you are just a flicker, whereas you are limitless. There is a huge difference.
They've not even got to time and space. They're not to create.
They've not gone to time and space. They have not gone to how do these flickers of consciousness come into being? How do they all organize themselves to give you a continuity? None of it is explained. And the final conclusion is what? The flicker is what? Insignificant in time and space. And this is what? Truth of time and space. What is the distance between these two visions? Huge. You have to understand, your buddhi has to understand it clearly because it's all logic.
I'm just curious, so when these debates took place, like how did they actually manifest? Were they people sitting in front of each other
Yes.
arguing?
Yes. Shankaracharya held many debates in person with people. Scholars. Big scholars. Right? And I just gave one example. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I gave one example. There was a big debate between Adi Shankaracharya and Mandana Mishra, who was a huge scholar of what we call another school of thought, which is Purva Mimamsaka. And they were sitting on the banks of Ganga in Banaras.
Which century?
This
8th century.
is 8th century.
Shankaracharya is 8th century.
And there was a judge, because when you do dialogue, there has to be an independent entity which has to decide who wins the argument. And who was the judge? Wife of Mandana Mishra was the judge.
Who was also a scholar.
She herself was a scholar. And the debate started. And they debated for days because they are not just ordinary human beings. Their thinking has reached very sophisticated levels. And at one point, what? The judge has to then what? There was a concluding point. The concluding point came when all the contentions the other person had were logically refuted. The judge gave a statement. Who wins the argument? Not her husband, who? Adi Shankaracharya.
It's obvious on the lighting note.
But whose wife did not generally, our whole vision gets what? He's my husband. What you have a tendency to what? Make your husband win. Look at the objectivity. This whole culture has enjoyed that objectivity, that integrity, that love for truth, and patience to what? Look into it. Engage in dialogues. See who has to say what. This is our spiritual heritage of India. It's not an ordinary heritage. All over the world, people, what? India, you give it a name, and what they say? It's a spiritual country. Why? Why is it a spiritual country? Our rishis sitting on the banks of Ganga have thought about life. thought about life in not some simplistic manner. Their thinking has reached what? Levels and levels and levels of sophistication and refinement. And that refinement, each one was thinking, and then each one was what? Debating with the other to come to what? What was in the center was the truth, and what was the rule of the debate? Whoever has the truth cannot be what? Contradicted by reason. That's why what? Each one used all one's thinking capacity to come up with one opposition. But you are not afraid of that opposition if you have truth with you. You can always show logical fallacy. And this is why years later, when Schrödinger looked into world philosophies, he says every philosophy can be logically refuted except for Vedanta. What you are studying is not something which is ordinary. It's not some blah 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 blah. It's not something which whatever comes to my mind is this amazing tradition of teachers and rishis who looked into the truth and debated.
In Sanskrit.
All in Sanskrit. All the literature is in Sanskrit. That's why when we went to study, we had to study Sanskrit. Because all the original commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya, they are all written in Sanskrit. There are people here, Surya, Anita, she was in my class, Nisamma, we've all studied that. Inherent in this program is all these other schools of thought. If you don't have questions, what? You are made to think about questions which others had. And also given answers to those questions. So that your knowledge gains a certain depth. You don't just make random statements and get away with it. It's not a free thinking. These are some of the finest truths which are available to humanity. Okay, so with this we will see we've done 3 schools of thoughts. There are some more, Sankhya and Yoga, which we will do tomorrow. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.